After FIlip Hronek signs his massive contract extension, we analyze the fallout and repercussions of said deal in regards to Vancouver's remaining UFAs and current trade targets. And Iliya Mikheyev's agent has been given the green light to facilitate a trade away from the Canucks. We'll be breaking down all of that in this episode of Canucks Digest, but first make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you don't miss any and all updates surrounding the Canucks as we head into free agency. And with that, let's hop into the first topic of the day, which is Hronek contract fallout. And if you haven't heard yet, if you've been living under a rock or you didn't see our last video, Hronek has been extended for 8 more years in Vancouver. They did pay retail price to extend him. However, they're backing up a huge bet they made when they overpaid to acquire him in a controversial 2023 trade from Detroit. That's not criticism in the words of Thomas Drance. The trade worked and it speaks volumes about what's next this summer. And as far as what's next this summer, Elliotte Friedman followed up on that saying there's a lot of craziness and conflicting information coming out of Vancouver. So I'm just going to let this play out and I have no doubt the Canucks will aim high and be aggressive. And with the amount of UFAs that they have to bring back this year, I can't blame them for being aggressive. We've seen that this is an early indication of that aggressiveness with re-signing Hronek. Who knows if Big Z or Dakota Joshua are next. We know Ian Cole is likely going to be testing free agency, so you will have a hole there at the right side on defense. It's great that you lock Hronek down to have a long-time playing mate with Hughes for a few more seasons. And if they're working on a deal with Tyler Myers, that's also reassuring. So they only have one spot, potentially two with Big Z leaving to fill in on that defense. And then you have Dakota Joshua as well. He's going to want a hefty price tag. And we kind of expected them to want a lot of money with these free agents because they're all coming off of career years. Almost everybody on Vancouver had a career season where they just excelled and went above and beyond what they were capable of their career until that point. And we're seeing that with that, they're going to demand a lot more money. So it's going to be harder to keep these guys around. However, we've seen and heard that Tocchet could potentially be going to management to kind of work out a better deal for Zadorov and Joshua. Who knows how true that is? It'll be interesting to see how that all shakes down. But with all those other guys leaving, you do want to bring back those key members, and I think Hronek was a big part of that. However, it is going to make it a lot harder to get other pieces. We know that they have been interested in Jake Guentzel, and we see here from Frank Seravalli that nonetheless, sources have been percolating that the Canucks might present the best mix of money and opportunity right out the gate. There is a familiarity there when it comes to Guentzel. They were interested in last year in the trade deadline. There's been expressed interest throughout over the past season or so, and this leaves Vancouver with $6.8 million left in cap space. If they go after Guentzel and get him, they'll only be left with $7 million. So funds are going to be very, very tight for Vancouver heading into the rest of free agency should they go and get Guentzel. But again, Lindholm is likely going to be leaving, so that's a big paycheck you don't have to worry about there. If you're able to get Tyler Myers on a hometown deal, that takes care of an issue there. If you're able to get Shilovs on a younger rookie, or not a rookie deal, but on a younger, lively kind of contract where he's not going to be asking too much yet. He hasn't had a full season. After he has that full season, maybe that's when he would have demanded more money. But because he came in so late in the year, they might not have to sign him to that big of a contract right out the gate. He can play out that contract, build his stock even more to maybe demanding to be, who knows, potentially the highest paid goalie in the league one day. The sky's the limit with that kid, so it's going to be interesting to see what he does as far as his contracts go. But I think Vancouver is going to be able to get him locked down to a shorter term or a cheaper deal than most of them. Tyler Myers, like we said, is taking a hometown deal, it seems. So if they're able to spend a little bit more money to get Guentzel, or if Guentzel even takes a bit of a pay cut to come to a team like Vancouver, maybe Tocchet sweet talks him, or Patrik Allvin, or Trader Jim himself. Who knows who's doing all these communications with Guentzel's camp and where the leaks are all coming from. But again, if you have to get rid of even a guy like Dakota Joshua, where that would be a big hole on the wing, but again, it would open up space to go and get a guy like Guentzel. We'd hate to see Joshua leave and Big Z, but seems like one of them is going to be leaving. However, when you talk about clearing cap space, there is one position at the right wing, or at the left wing, I should say, where we are going to potentially see some cap space clear. And that brings us to our second topic of the day, which is Mikheyev's agent gets the green light. And we see here that agent Dan Mielsen has permission to help facilitate an Iliya Mikheyev trade away from the Canucks. This isn't anything new as far as what Canucks fans were expecting. We knew that Iliya Mikheyev was probably going to get shipped out. He has been on the trade target list for a while, especially on Frank Seravalli's trade list for the past week or so, it seems, in that list regards. But it seems like Iliya Mikheyev is someone that fans had expected to leave after a very, very disappointing season. I mean, you look at his stats: 11 goals, 20 points or 20 assists for 31 points, a plus one rating in 78 games. He was better in the earlier half of the season, then completely fizzled out and just was an absentee ghost in the later half of the season and the playoffs. I always said that he was like the Luis Mendoza of the Canucks from Mighty Ducks 2, where he's all speed and nothing else. And that seemed to be what got him to Vancouver in the first place, was that breakout season in 2021-2022 with the Toronto Maple Leafs, playing 53 games, 21 goals, 11 assists for 32 points. So even with that, he matched almost what he did this past season in Vancouver. However, he did it in way less games, and it was unfortunately before his injury, and that was a big part of his drop-off. You see here in 2021-2022, Mikheyev was in the 95th percentile in top speed and in speed burst, and 14.3% shooting percentage. But then after the injury, he just hasn't been the same. 69th in top speed, 70th in speed burst, 7.5% shooting percentage. Lost his speed and stopped getting lucky, and his effectiveness completely crashed. And I couldn't agree more here. It seemed like Mikheyev was just a ghost out there. There was that picture that the Canucks put out on their Instagram where he was like a blur, and that's all he was. He was just a blur. You could go through him, you could go around him. He was going to be fast. That was to be guaranteed. But you could always be sure that he was going to be around there, but not really doing too much with the puck. He just seemed to be getting cardio out there. So I think this coming with a 4.45 cap hit and getting rid of that, I think that goes a long way towards clearing up a bit more space to make something like getting Guentzel happen, where if you talk to anybody, I'm pretty sure they would all agree that getting Guentzel and getting rid of Mikheyev would be a massive upgrade to the Canucks. I think anyone would say that, and even if they weren't a Canucks fan. But I think if you have a guy like Guentzel, Joshua, and then you have people alternating on those other lines, I think those are going to be two ringers that are going to make life very tough for opposing teams. And I think Guentzel is going to bring out the best in the first line players like Miller and Petey. I think Petey definitely needs someone more effective to play with on the line this year. I know Brock Boeser is going to be coming back, so who knows? Maybe Jake Guentzel goes to that second line should they lose Dakota Joshua, or maybe you see some shakeup in the third and fourth lines. There's going to be a lot of mix-up happening with this Vancouver team, but it's going to be trying to keep the main core of guys together and keep the supporting pieces together enough where it's not going to change too much if you lose a few guys here and there. We already know that Ian Cole's going to be leaving, like I said, and it seems like Zadorov could be going on his way out, as well as Elias Lindholm. So if you're able to lose guys who haven't been there for too long, where the chemistry isn't going to be too much affected, I've said it before, how this team chemistry is just rock solid. So if you're losing pieces where, yes, Big Z is a big part of that team chemistry, but he hasn't been there very long. But if you're losing those key pieces of chemistry, I think it's going to be more of a detriment to the team than not. So a guy like Iliya Mikheyev, who hasn't been there very long, hasn't played too many games aside from last season. So if you're losing a guy like him, I don't think it's a big blow to team morale and chemistry, especially if you're upgrading to a guy like Jake Guentzel in the event of you lose Dakota Joshua or you lose Elias Lindholm and need to free up space. I think if you lose Elias Lindholm, you definitely have to get rid of Mikheyev to go and get someone better. So that's all we have for Iliya Mikheyev's side of things. It's going to be interesting to see where things go there. And then we hop into our third topic, which is everyone's favorite topic, which is comment of the day. And we see here from Jonas Michael Moyer that love the deal, as well as you well said, the first domino going to be expensive next couple weeks. And this is in reference to the video that Mark put out the other day when Hronek got signed. And I agree with you here. It's going to be a very expensive offseason for the Canucks. I think they're going to use all the cap space that they have available. I don't think they're going to leave any money on the table as far as signings are concerned. And I think they're going to try and bring in more and more pieces to try and get this team on a further playoff run while trimming some of the fat or getting rid of some of the passengers, as Rick Tocchet was saying in his press conference in the playoffs. But that's going to do it for this episode of Canucks Digest. Let us know what you think down in the comments. Who would you trade Iliya Mikheyev for? What would you do to make that happen to get Guentzel? We'd love to hear it. We love you guys' comments. We love interacting with you guys. But for that, that's going to do it for this episode of Canucks Digest. Stay tuned for the next one. Take care.